Guys, guess what? I am sending this wedding invite to my fat ex-wife. I want to see those tears of hers again. Hello, fatty. Since we are officially divorced, I am inviting you to my wedding.
David, what did I do to you to deserve this?
Wait, am I dreaming? Is that not my fat ex-wife? Why is she with the president's son?
David, we are cooked.
David invited his overweight ex-wife to his luxury wedding for one reason: to humiliate her in front of the entire city. His friends laughed, his glamorous bride mocked her, and everyone waited eagerly to watch her walk in alone and heartgloppen. But just as the wedding ceremony began, the earth-shaking roar of a private jet brought everything to a halt. Moments later, the doors opened and the woman they had ridiculed walked in beside the president's only son. What happened next left the groom wishing he had never sent that invitation. Stay with me until the very end, because this unforgettable story proves that the people you underestimate today may become the ones the whole world honors tomorrow. And if you enjoy powerful stories filled with shocking twists, life lessons, and satisfying karma, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next amazing story. 3 years earlier, while most people in the city measured a person's value by their appearance or the size of their bank account, Amara measured people by the kindness in their hearts. She was a cheerful, confident plus-size woman whose smile could brighten even the darkest day. Every morning before sunrise, she opened her tiny roadside tailoring shop, greeting customers with warmth and genuine joy. The shop was small, with only one sewing machine and a few rolls of fabric stacked neatly against the wall, but it was enough to keep her dream alive. Unlike many fashion designers who only created clothes for slim women, Amara dreamed of building a fashion company that would make elegant clothing for curvy women. She knew what it felt like to walk into a boutique and realize nothing beautiful had been made for someone with her body. She often told her customers, "Every woman deserves to feel beautiful. Confidence isn't determined by your size." Many women left her little shop not just with new dresses, but with restored confidence. Around the same time, David was living a completely different life. He was a handsome architecture graduate with exceptional talent and big dreams, but life refused to give him a chance. Week after week, he attended interviews only to receive another rejection. Each rejection made him question himself a little more. Some interviewers praised his qualifications before telling him they had chosen someone with more experience. Others never called him back at all. One rainy afternoon, after yet another unsuccessful interview, David stood helplessly at a crowded bus stop. As he reached into his pocket to pay for his fare, panic spread across his face. His wallet was gone. Someone had stolen it without him realizing. He searched every pocket over and over again, hoping it would magically appear. The bus conductor grew impatient. "Young man, if you don't have money, please step aside. You are delaying everyone." Embarrassed, David quietly stepped back as people behind him began complaining. Just then, a gentle voice spoke behind him. "I'll pay for him." David turned around and saw a smiling young woman holding out the fare. It was Amara. He immediately shook his head. "No, I can't let you do that." Amara smiled warmly. "It's only bus fare." One day, when life is kinder to you, help someone else. That will be enough. David hesitated before accepting. "Thank you. I don't even know your name." "I'm Amara." "I'm David." She smiled again. "Nice to meet you, David." That simple act of kindness became the beginning of an unexpected friendship. Whenever David passed by her tailoring shop, he stopped to greet her. Sometimes she offered him water after a long day of job hunting. Other times, they simply talked for a few minutes before he continued home. Those short conversations gradually became longer. Weeks turned into months, and before long, they couldn't imagine going through a day without seeing each other. Whenever another rejection letter arrived, David walked straight to Amara's shop. He would sit quietly while she worked at her sewing machine. One afternoon, he sighed deeply and said, "Maybe everyone was right. Maybe architecture isn't for me." Amara stopped sewing and looked at him. "Do you really believe that?" He lowered his eyes. How many more times can someone hear no before accepting they are not good enough? She smiled gently. "David, your situation isn't your destination. Today is only one chapter of your story, not the ending." He managed a weak smile. "You always know what to say." "Because I believe in you, even when you don't." Her words slowly became the strength that kept him moving forward. Their friendship naturally grew into love. David admired her kindness, her resilience, and the peace he always felt around her. One evening, after closing her shop, they sat together on a quiet bench overlooking the city. David nervously reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring. "I'm sorry it isn't expensive," he said softly. "One day I'll buy you a better one." Tears immediately filled Amara's eyes before he could say another word. She shook her head as she smiled through her tears. "David, I don't care how much the ring costs. I only care about the man giving it to me." He slipped the ring on her finger. "Will you marry me?" She laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They hugged each other tightly as they promised to build their future together, believing that love would be enough to overcome every challenge life placed before them. But soon, reality became much harder than either of them had imagined. Months passed, yet David still couldn't find a stable job. Bills continued piling up on the small table in their apartment. The landlord began knocking almost every week, demanding payment and threatening to throw them out if they failed to pay. David became frustrated and ashamed. One evening, he sat alone with his head in his hands. "Maybe marrying me was the biggest mistake of your life," he said quietly. Amara immediately knelt beside him and held his hands. "Don't ever say that. Look at us, Amara. You work every day while I keep failing. I can't even provide for my own wife." She gently lifted his chin until he looked into her eyes. "We're a team. Your burden is my burden, and my victory will be your victory." Without telling David, Amara made a painful decision. She took out the only valuable thing her late mother had left her, a beautiful gold necklace that had been passed down through generations. Holding it in her hands, tears rolled down her cheeks. "Mama," she whispered, "forgive me. I'm choosing my family." She sold the necklace and used the money to pay their overdue rent before the landlord could evict them. She bought David a new suit so he could attend interviews looking confident. She carefully rewrote and edited his resume, making sure every detail reflected his talent. Night after night, while David slept, Amara stayed awake in her little tailoring shop sewing clothes until dawn, just to earn enough money to keep them afloat. Every morning, she smiled as if she wasn't exhausted, because she never wanted him to feel guilty. Finally, after countless disappointments, David received the phone call he had been praying for. A construction company offered him a position. He rushed home with tears of joy. "Amara," he shouted before she even opened the door, "I got the job!" She threw her arms around him and cried happily. "I told you your situation wasn't your destination." David kissed her forehead. "You never stopped believing in me." Years passed and David's talent quickly attracted attention. Promotion followed promotion until he eventually left to establish his own real estate company. The business grew faster than anyone expected. Contracts poured in, profits multiplied. Before long, money was flowing into their lives. They moved into a beautiful house. Luxury cars filled the driveway. Expensive vacations replaced sleepless nights. Looking around their new home, Amara smiled quietly to herself. Every sacrifice had been worth it because the man she loved had finally achieved his dream. But as David's success grew, something else quietly began to grow alongside it: his pride. He entered a world of luxury parties, glamorous business galas, and exclusive celebrity circles where appearances mattered more than loyalty. His wealthy friends constantly stared at Amara before whispering cruel comments. "She doesn't fit your image anymore. You've become successful. Why are you still married to someone like her?" At first, David defended her. "She's my wife. She stood beside me when nobody else did." But the insults never stopped. Slowly, their voices became louder than his conscience. Little by little, they poisoned his heart. One evening, before a business gala, David stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie. "Maybe you shouldn't come tonight," he said casually. Amara looked surprised. "Why?" "It's just important clients will be there." She forced a smile. "Are you embarrassed to be seen with me?" David avoided her eyes. "Don't make this difficult." After that night, it happened more often. He bought her expensive gym memberships. He hired personal trainers. He paid for diet programs. Then came consultations with cosmetic surgeons. Every conversation seemed to revolve around changing her appearance. Amara tried everything, not because she hated herself, but because she loved her husband and desperately wanted to save their marriage. Yet nothing she did was ever enough. The more she tried, the colder David became. He stopped inviting her to events. He spent more time with wealthy friends than with her own wife. Their once lively home became painfully quiet. Then one evening, as Amara returned home earlier than expected, she heard laughter coming from the living room. David was entertaining several business associates. She was about to walk in when she heard one of them ask, "So, when are you finally upgrading your wife?" The room exploded with laughter. David laughed louder than anyone else before replying, "I've outgrown her." Amara froze where she stood. It felt as though the entire world had gone silent. The man she had believed in when everyone else doubted him, the man she had sacrificed everything for, had reduced her to a joke. Those 4 words shattered her heart in a way no insult from a stranger ever could. The distance between David and Amara continued to grow until one evening he finally asked her to sit down in the living room. His voice was unusually calm, almost emotionless. Amara looked at him and immediately sensed that something was terribly wrong. "David, what's happening?" she asked quietly. He took a deep breath without looking into her eyes. "I think it's time we ended this marriage." For a few seconds, Amara couldn't speak. She stared at him, hoping she had misunderstood. "What did you just say?" David finally looked at her, but there was no warmth left in his eyes. "I want a divorce." Tears immediately gathered in Amara's eyes. "A divorce? After everything we've been through?" David nodded without hesitation. "Yes." She slowly shook her head. "Why? Tell me what I've done wrong. We can fix this together." David sighed impatiently. "This isn't about what you've done. It's about who I want to become." Amara frowned in confusion. "I don't understand." He stood up and adjusted the sleeve of his expensive jacket before saying the words that shocked everyone who later heard about them. "I deserve someone who looks successful." The room fell silent. Amara felt as though the air had been pulled from her lungs. "You're divorcing me because of how I look?" she whispered. David folded his arms. "The world judges appearances. Whether you like it or not, people expect successful men to have wives who match their lifestyle." Tears rolled freely down Amara's cheeks. She stood up and walked closer to him. "David, please look at me. Do you remember when you had nothing? Do you remember sleeping on that tiny mattress because we couldn't afford a bed? Do you remember the nights we shared one meal because that was all we had? Do you remember the necklace my mother left me? I sold it so we wouldn't be thrown out of our apartment. I stayed awake every night sewing clothes so you could chase your dreams. We survived all of that together." David remained silent. She grabbed his hand desperate to reach the man she used to know. "Please don't throw away everything we've built. We promised each other forever." David slowly pulled his hands away. His voice remained cold. "I'll always appreciate what you did, but gratitude isn't attraction." Those words shattered whatever hope remained inside her. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Amara walked out of the house she had helped build, carrying only 2 suitcases and a broken heart. She didn't ask for the luxury cars, she didn't fight over the expensive furniture or the beautiful home she had once dreamed of raising children in. She simply walked away with her dignity. Standing outside the gate, she looked back one last time before whispering to herself, "One day, this pain will make sense." Months later, social media exploded with breaking news. David had announced his engagement to Vanessa, one of the country's most glamorous influencers and the daughter of a wealthy family. The engagement photos covered every entertainment blog. Headlines described them as the city's newest power couple. Millions admired their beauty, their wealth, and their glamorous lifestyle. Every picture reminded Amara of the life she had lost. Alone in her small apartment, she quietly cried, not because David had found someone else, but because she couldn't understand how someone she had loved so deeply could forget their entire journey together. One afternoon, while arranging dresses inside her modest boutique, the door opened. Amara looked up and froze. David walked inside wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. He placed a luxurious gold wedding invitation on the counter between them. "I'm getting married." Amara looked at the invitation before lifting her eyes to him. "Why are you giving this to me?" David smiled. "You should come." She stared at him in disbelief. "Why?" His smile grew wider. "So you can finally see what you lost." He turned around and calmly walked out of the boutique without waiting for her response. As soon as he left, Amara slowly sat down, staring silently at the invitation in her hands. That same evening, Vanessa uploaded a mysterious video on social media. Smiling into the camera, she said, "We're inviting someone very special to our wedding. Trust me, you won't want to miss this." Within hours, influencer friends began secretly planning to live stream the event. Hashtags started trending across social media as people guessed who the mysterious guest might be. Before long, everyone discovered it was David's ex-wife. Thousands of comments appeared. Some mocked Amara, others said she would never have the courage to attend. Many openly admitted they couldn't wait to watch her humiliation unfold live. Amara almost threw the invitation into the trash. She couldn't imagine willingly walking into a room filled with people waiting to laugh at her. But when her elderly tailor mentor noticed the invitation, he quietly picked it up and handed it back to her. "Child," he said gently, "sometimes God prepares a table before those who laughed at you." Amara looked at him silently. "Go with your head held high. Never let anyone think they destroyed you." After a long moment, she nodded. "I'll go." Instead of allowing her pain to consume her, Amara threw herself into her work. Every design she created reflected the message she wanted women to hear. You do not have to shrink yourself to deserve beauty. She focused on creating elegant luxury clothing specifically for plus-size women. Rather than hiding their bodies, her designs celebrated them. Every customer who wore her dresses stood a little taller. Women who had spent years feeling invisible suddenly felt beautiful again. Slowly, word began spreading about her unique designs. Sales increased little by little. Her tiny boutique attracted customers from neighboring cities. She organized charity fashion shows where women of every size proudly walked the runway with confidence. During one of those charity events, while carrying 2 cups of coffee backstage, Amara accidentally bumped into a gentleman. Coffee splashed onto his jacket. She gasped in horror. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. The young man looked down at his stained jacket before laughing warmly. Don't worry, he said with a smile. I've spilled worse. His calm reaction surprised her. Are you sure? I'll pay for the cleaning. He smiled again. Only if you promise to stop apologizing. She couldn't help laughing. Fair enough. His name was Daniel. He was humble, funny, respectful, and refreshingly easy to talk to. Unlike David, Daniel never stared at her body. He listened carefully whenever she spoke about fashion, business, or her dream of changing how plus-size women saw themselves. Your clothes aren't just beautiful, he told her one afternoon. They're changing how people see themselves. Amara smiled. That's all I've ever wanted. Their friendship developed naturally. Daniel quietly supported her without expecting recognition. Unknown to Amara, he occasionally ordered dresses from her boutique using different customer names simply to help increase her sales. He introduced her to influential business contacts without taking any credit and never mentioned his own background. To Amara, he was simply a kind man who believed in her dream. Months later, she accidentally discovered the truth. Daniel wasn't an ordinary businessman. He was the president's only son. The revelation left her shocked and deeply hurt. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Daniel looked at her sincerely. Because I wanted someone who loved me before my name. I wanted to know that if you chose me, it was because of who I am, not because of the family I belong to. Amara remained quiet as she thought back to every conversation they had shared. Then she realized something important. Daniel had never changed. Before she knew his identity, he had respected her. After revealing the truth, he remained exactly the same man she had grown to admire. His kindness had never been an act. Slowly, her disappointment disappeared, replaced by trust and love. Their relationship blossomed into something genuine and peaceful. One evening, Daniel took her to a quiet garden overlooking the city. Holding her hands gently, he smiled. Amara, will you spend the rest of your life with me? Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, yes. Their wedding was held quietly, with only close family and friends present. There were no television cameras, no social media influencers, and no publicity, only genuine love and happiness. During the ceremony, the president himself warmly embraced Amara and smiled proudly. A nation's greatness begins with the character of its families, he said. Welcome home, my daughter. Those simple words healed wounds she had carried for years. Soon afterward, Daniel's family invested in her growing fashion company, but only on one condition, that Amara would always remain the creative force behind the brand she had built with her own hands. With new resources, skilled teams, and international opportunities, her company expanded across the world while remaining faithful to its original mission, celebrating the confidence, beauty, and dignity of women of every size. The story returned to the present as David's lavish wedding reached its most anticipated moment. The luxurious ballroom shimmered beneath magnificent crystal chandeliers, while expensive flowers decorated every corner. Celebrities, politicians, business tycoons, and famous influencers filled the hall, chatting excitedly as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Yet, despite all the glamour surrounding them, quiet whispers continued to spread from table to table. Everyone was waiting for the same person. Do you think she'll actually come? One guest whispered. Another laughed. Of course she'll come. She'll want one last look at the man she lost. Vanessa overheard the conversation and smiled proudly. Leaning toward her bridesmaid, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. I just hope she doesn't feel too uncomfortable watching what she could never become. The women laughed together. Even a few waiters exchanged amused glances, struggling to hide their smiles as they carried trays through the room. David stood confidently beside the officiant, pleased that everything was going exactly as he had imagined. Then, without warning, the sound of police sirens echoed outside the venue. Conversations immediately stopped. Guests looked at one another in confusion as more sirens followed. Someone hurried toward the entrance, while others rushed to the windows. Outside, one black luxury SUV after another pulled into the compound, escorted by heavily armed presidential security officers. Nobody understood what was happening. "Is someone important here?" one businessman nervously asked. "This level of security is only used for heads of state," another replied. At that moment, the master of ceremonies answered an urgent phone call. As he listened, his expression completely changed. His hands trembled slightly before he slowly stepped onto the stage and reached for the microphone. The ballroom became completely silent. Taking a deep breath, he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. The president's family has arrived." Instantly, everyone stood to their feet. Cabinet ministers adjusted their jackets, state governors straightened their ties, foreign diplomats respectfully stood in silence. Even the wealthiest business billionaires rose without hesitation. David frowned in confusion, while Vanessa's confident smile slowly faded. The enormous doors opened. Presidential security officers entered first, carefully scanning the room before stepping aside. Then, Daniel walked into the ballroom with quiet confidence. Many guests immediately recognized him and respectfully bowed their heads. But only seconds later, every eye shifted away from him. Standing beside him was Amara. She wore an elegant, custom-designed gown from her own fashion house, perfectly tailored to celebrate her figure with grace and confidence. She had not transformed herself into someone else just to gain acceptance. She had embraced the woman she had always been. Every step she took reflected quiet dignity. There was no anger on her face, no bitterness, no desire for revenge, only peace. The ballroom froze. It took only a moment before guests began recognizing her. The same woman they had laughed about only minutes earlier now stood beside the president's only son with effortless elegance. David felt his knees weaken. He grabbed the edge of a nearby chair to steady himself as disbelief washed over his face. Vanessa stared in complete shock. The smile she had worn all morning vanished without a trace. Before anyone could recover from the surprise, another announcement echoed through the hall. "His Excellency the President." Everyone immediately turned toward the entrance once again. The president entered with calm dignity as cameras flashed non-stop around him. Many celebrities and important guests stepped forward, hoping to greet him first. But the president walked past every one of them without stopping. He smiled warmly as he approached Amara. Opening his arms, he embraced her affectionately and said with genuine pride, "My beautiful daughter." The entire hall erupted with the sound of camera shutters. Influencers who had spent the morning preparing to live stream Amara's humiliation quickly lowered their phones before rushing to capture photographs with her instead. The very people who had mocked her only moments earlier suddenly surrounded her with compliments. "Your gown is absolutely stunning. I've heard your fashion brand is now international. Congratulations, we're so proud of your success." Amara simply smiled politely. She greeted everyone with kindness, showing no arrogance and making no effort to embarrass those who had laughed at her. Her quiet grace made many people feel even more ashamed. After standing frozen for several moments, David slowly walked toward her, his eyes filled with regret. "Amara," he said softly. She turned and looked at him calmly. He lowered his head. I don't know where to begin. I'm sorry. I was blind. I forgot everything you did for me. I hurt the one person who never stopped believing in me." Before he could continue, Daniel gently placed a hand on David's shoulder. His voice remained calm and respectful. "No bitterness today," he said quietly. "Let this be a day of truth." David nodded silently, unable to find another word. Later that evening, Daniel was invited to give a short toast before the reception continued. Holding his glass, he looked around the silent ballroom before speaking. "Some people spend their lives searching for beauty, forgetting that beauty without kindness fades quickly. Character is the only treasure that grows more valuable with time. I am grateful that life brought me a woman whose heart remained beautiful even after it had been broken." No one spoke after he finished. The ballroom remained completely silent. Many guests slowly lowered their heads, ashamed, as they remembered every cruel joke they had laughed at only a short time earlier. David stood motionless, staring at Amara from across the room. At that moment, the painful truth finally settled into his heart. He had not lost her because of her appearance. He had lost the greatest blessing of his life because pride had blinded him to the value of the woman who had loved him when he had nothing. Months passed after the wedding, and David tried to convince himself that life would simply return to normal. But little by little, the empire he had worked so hard to build began falling apart. Investigations into several of his company's projects uncovered fraudulent land deals that had been carried out by senior executives he had trusted completely. They had forged documents, manipulated contracts, and hidden illegal transactions for years, while David ignored warning signs because he had been too busy chasing status and protecting his public image. The news spread quickly across the country. Investors immediately began pulling out of major projects. Banks froze company accounts before moving to seize valuable assets. One luxury property after another was sold to cover mounting debts. The same business magazines that had once praised David's success were now publishing headlines about the collapse of his real estate empire. Every day seemed to bring another loss. At home, the pressure became unbearable. Vanessa, who had loved the glamorous lifestyle, expensive vacations, luxury shopping, and endless attention from the media, struggled to accept their new reality. One evening, she looked around their once elegant home and said bitterly, "This isn't the life I signed up for." David sat quietly without answering. She shook her head in frustration. "Your phone used to ring with opportunities. Now it's only lawyers and creditors." He looked down at the floor. "I'm trying to fix it." Vanessa sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if there'll be anything left to fix." As their fortune disappeared, so did the people who had once surrounded them. The influencers who had proudly posted pictures with them stopped returning their calls. The societals who had competed for invitations to their parties suddenly became too busy to visit. Business associates who once praised David's brilliance quietly distanced themselves to protect their own reputations. Sitting alone one evening in the empty living room, David finally understood a painful truth. The applause he had spent years chasing had never been loyalty. It had only followed his success. The moment the money disappeared, so did the people he had mistaken for friends. Meanwhile, life was unfolding very differently for Amara. Her fashion company continued expanding across continents, opening stores in major cities around the world. Every collection she designed carried the same message she had believed in from the beginning, that every woman deserved to feel confident, elegant, and beautiful exactly as she was. Her fashion shows became more than glamorous events. They became celebrations of confidence, dignity, and inclusivity. Women from different countries, cultures, and backgrounds proudly walked the runway wearing her designs. Many shared emotional stories about how her work had helped them accept themselves after years of shame and rejection. During one interview, a journalist asked, "What do you think is the secret behind your success?" Amara smiled gently before answering. I stopped trying to make women fit the world's standards. Instead, I wanted the world to see the beauty that had always been there. Her words inspired millions. Before long, Amara became known not only as one of the world's most successful fashion entrepreneurs, but also as a mentor who encouraged other women to build businesses of their own. She regularly organized training programs, shared business opportunities, and invested in young female entrepreneurs who simply needed someone to believe in them, just as she had once believed in David. Years later, Amara took that mission even further by launching the Amara Foundation. Through the foundation, she funded scholarships for young women who could not afford higher education. She supported widows rebuilding their lives after devastating loss. She created entrepreneurship programs that helped women start businesses with dignity and confidence. She also sponsored health initiatives that encouraged self-worth, emotional well-being, and healthy living without promoting shame or unrealistic beauty standards. One afternoon, during one of the foundation's charity outreach events, volunteers worked together distributing supplies and helping families in need. Among them was a quiet man wearing a simple volunteer vest, carefully arranging food packages without drawing attention to himself. It was David. He had not come as a guest of honor or to seek recognition. He had simply come looking for an opportunity to begin again by serving others. As Amara walked through the venue greeting volunteers, their eyes met for the first time in years. David slowly walked toward her. He looked older, humbler, and far different from the proud man she had once known. After a long silence, he spoke softly. "Amara, I am sorry." She listened quietly. Tears gathered in his eyes as he continued. "I spent years chasing the approval of people who disappeared the moment I needed them. I traded loyalty for pride and lost the greatest person God ever placed in my life. If I could change the past, I would." Amara looked at him with calm kindness. There was no anger in her eyes, only peace. She smiled gently and said, "I forgave you a long time ago. Carry the lesson forward." David lowered his head. "Thank you." He walked away slowly, understanding something he had never truly understood before. Forgiveness was a precious gift, but it did not erase the consequences of the choices he had made. Some opportunities once lost could never be recovered. As the years passed, David quietly dedicated himself to serving others, no longer seeking applause or recognition. David invited his ex-wife to witness what he believed would be the greatest triumph of his life. Instead, he became the witness to the extraordinary life she built after he underestimated her. The woman he tried to shame became a symbol of dignity, compassion, and purpose. And the greatest lesson of all is this: never judge someone's worth by appearance. Wealth can attract attention, and beauty can attract admiration, but character earns lasting respect. The people who stand beside you when you have nothing are often the greatest treasures you will ever receive, and losing them because of pride may become the greatest regret of your life.